Let's finish this up. This was kind of a pain in the ass. I read a lot of novels for this video series. If I didn't know the original trilogy before, I sure do now. James Caan adapted Return of the Jedi to the page. He is best known for his novelizations, also working with George Lucas on his Temple of Doom adaptation for Indiana Jones. He worked on The Goonies later on, and adaptations of the first two Poltergeist movies. This may be a shocker, but the story of Return of the Jedi hasn't changed much between the film and the novel. Luke and Leia head to save Han Solo at Jabba's palace, with Lando already in deep cover at the palace. They save Han, but Jabba catches them, keeping Leia as a slave and planning to execute Han, Luke, and Chewie, but they manage to strike back, with Boba Fett being killed in the process. The group escape the skiff and learn more of the second Death Star. Luke has to stop by to see Yoda first, though. Yoda dies. Anyway, the group jettisons off to Endor, where they're captured by the Ewoks, and then they befriend the Ewoks. Luke tells Leia they're siblings and that he has to uncorrupt Darth Vader. Han, Chewie, and Leia lead a ground assault to disable the Death Star shield, as Lando with co-pilot Nub Nub lead a ship assault, hoping to infiltrate the under-construction Death Star and destroy it. And Luke goes to confront his father, Darth Vader, and his father's master, the Emperor. Luke and Vader fight, both in mind and body, as the Emperor goads the whole thing on. Luke surrenders, gambling his father won't kill him, and Darth Vader turns on the Emperor, killing him instead. Han and Leia lower the shields on Endor with help of the Ewoks, and Darth Vader dies after seeing his son without a mask for the first and only time. Luke escapes, Lando blows up the Death Star, and the gang throw a sick party on Endor. This book is very descriptive. A lot of internal reflection is shown on the trilogy, which helps connect the series more than the films could. We see Han's gratitude that his friends saved him and the confusion he has following his removal from carbonite freezing. Not just the carbon freezing confusion, but also the confusion that he has true friends that risked not only their lives, but potentially the entire rebellion just to save him. Something that he saw as an uneven trade, and also something he, as a loner scoundrel, couldn't have expected from anyone previously except perhaps Chewbacca. Luke thinks further of killing Darth Vader, having more doubt than we see in the film, which in the films we see him more dead set on redeeming his father. He also shows more fear that the Emperor will keep his grip on the galaxy in the final confrontation. Obi-Wan's monologue about Anakin in his Jedi days was expanded from what we see in the movie, describing that Anakin became Vader after being burned in lava and turning to the dark side, something that we would of course see in the Star Wars prequels later on. A couple things that don't line up are the facts that Luke remembered his mom and sister after being prompted by Obi-Wan, who said he was a twin, though even Force-sensitive children couldn't possibly remember their mother moments after exiting the womb, which we know from the prequels is when Luke was separated from Padme, being in her presence for literal seconds. The book also states that Owen Lars, or Uncle Owen, was Obi-Wan's brother that he had left Luke with, which in a way would explain why Vader never suspected Owen, his stepbrother, of being Luke's caretaker. But obviously, based on the prequels, that was not the canonical explanation they went with Owen Lars being the stepbrother to Anakin. Anakin has some dying thoughts which examine his regret and life, something I think was an amazing ad that you couldn't really do on film. Han Solo's arc of leaving behind his past greed to do good with the rebellion and going from a scoundrel to a hero is also emphasized here in his internal monologues. This book is probably the best of the three original adaptations, but has the most continuity issues, as the pre-trilogy canon was more set in stone with the creation of the Star Wars prequels later on. Classic Star Wars Return of the Jedi is the best of the three classic Star Wars books, leaving the author Larry Weinberg behind for Elizabeth Levy, most well known for her children's mystery series, Something Queer is Going On, which was retitled to The Fletcher Mysteries, as queer was taking on a more negative connotation in culture, before coming back around and being reclaimed by the LGBT community. Whatever, you get it, but this lady had a more comprehensive history in novelizations than Larry Weinberg did, and I think that makes this one far and away the cleanest of the 3 classic Star Wars novels, feeling more descriptive and less like it was recounted by memory the way the other 2 classic Star Wars novels had previously. It also bolsters another nice, though very 90s looking cover. It's okay, but still very abridged, and it makes it feel a bit more robotic than the longer versions of the book. 2004 saw Ryder Wyndham write out the final book in the trilogy. He wrote the first 2 2004 junior novels, and like those junior novels, this book was highly accurate to the source material, trying to explain away the plot hole, the rule of 2, that started coming into play in the prequel era, with Vader assuming if they courted Luke, it would all turn out fine, and they would either just ignore the rule of 2, or he and Luke would kill the Emperor. Again, this is one to read if you want a canon-accurate book, and 2017 once again saw a minor re-edit of this book that put its continuity up to date with the Disney canon, adjusting a few things between the Legends and modern continuity, though I think either will work fine for modern continuity heads, with the 2004 version still being the easier one to find, though both are available on the Libby library app, at least out here in Minnesota. By the way, you guys should get Libby and Hoopa if you want to read expanded Star Wars media without smashing your wallet to pieces. You'll need to get a library card, but if you don't have one of those, I would recommend it. It's how libraries get funded, which is how I get free Star Wars books and stuff, so sign up. Anyway, this one's pretty good. William Shakespeare's The Jedi Doth Return is the William Shakespeare adaptation of the story by Ian Dosher, and again is pretty accurate with the Shakespeare-style writing, though still taking place in space and following the story accurately. This one addresses the Luke and Leia kiss, with Luke getting depressed he was macking on his sister. In fact, he goes into an aside about this tattooing folk story about 2 Tusken Raiders accidentally committing incest, and then the girl Tusken kills herself because she's so sad about it. This adaptation may have overcorrected a bit. The Luke Leia kiss stuff, though, I always found hilarious how authors attempt to cope with it. This aside does allow for a very Shakespearean monologue, though, so perhaps it was for the best for this adaptation. Darth Vader also has a monologue when returning to the light. I think of the Ian Dosher OT adaptations, this film was really the one that could do up the Shakespearean aspects with all the melodrama. Solid enough book, but still not my thing like the other William Shakespeare adaptations. Alright, finally we have Beware the Dark Side, a book by Tom Engelberger, a Star Wars author who worked on a series of Star Wars books based on real objects. I don't really know what these are, but anyways, he has also worked on those certain point of view novels on those Willys segments from those, so that was kind of cool. This book, unlike the other 2 accompanying novels, The Princess, the Scoundrel, and The Farm Boy, and So You Want to Be a Jedi, chose not to really have a gimmick. It's pretty much a slightly dumbed down yet straightforward adaptation for kids. There is some faceless narrator that briefly takes asides to interject some lore that was dumbed down for kids, which may be fun for young fans who are interested in picking up Star Wars lore. And I think it's a fun new way to trickle in some stuff and try to create new super fans. This book could work as an alternative to the main novelization and seems like a good one for Star Wars crazed kids, since it does well to explain lore and stuff that is a bit beyond the film, and it's still a pretty easy read at that. Overall, I like this one, even if there's a lot less to it than others, with the most worthwhile of this junior novel trilogy in my opinion still being The Princess, the Scoundrel, and The Farm Boy. Alright, so those were the Return of the Jedi novelizations. I'll eventually do the prequel trilogy of films and their novelizations, and the Disney films later on, but this was such a pain to do that it'll probably be a bit. That's what I'm saying for the tease at least. In reality, I go through these books so fast. I'm just about to start the prequel series and we'll probably make videos on them in like 6 months. C'est la vie, I guess. Which is French for, Anyways, please check my Star Wars playlist popping up on the end screen now for a lot more Star Wars content, including my review of the actual Return of the Jedi movie. You know, the film, not the books.